So you've been playing Chaos Zero Nightmare for a while now, you've been saving up, finally hit those 300 pulls that you needed to use the selector, but really don't know who to pick. Do you go with Luke, who is the new hotness, maybe Mei Lin as the crab killer that she currently is, or maybe even Veronica as the queen of draw support? Who should you pick? Hey everybody, my name is Cosmic, welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the selector. And I've been putting off this video because I think it is a very debatable topic to a point, but also there is something to be said about just picking your favorite character. So I do want to stress up front a couple rules before we even get into why I think there's three very clear choices that we're going to talk about in the video, kind of set some guidelines, right? So first and foremost, Chaos Zero Nightmare as a game is something that if you really love a character, if you invest the time into them, farm up their save data, then there's no problem making that character well enough to go through and clear all of the current content in the game. So I don't want to discourage you from picking your favorite character out of this selection just because it might not be one that I highlight in this video. So if you have a favorite husbando or waifu, please by all means go ahead and pick it. And then also I want to stress the other point of this is think about what banner you might be pulling on next. If you're going to be pulling on the Chizuru banner coming up as an example, then you probably don't want to use this yet, or whatever the next banner you might be pulling on. If it's a while out, maybe you'll use it now, but keep in mind that there is always a chance of losing the 50-50 or even hitting a character early, and then suddenly you find out that, well, you don't really need who you use the selector for. So this is a really important decision that you are going to make, and the reason why I stress it, which again with enough pulls we'll all eventually get there, but again I think there's three very clear choices that you should be aiming for when you use the selector. So if you want to see more videos like this one on Chaos Zero Nightmare, don't forget to like and subscribe as it does help out the channel a ton. And again, huge thank you for all the love and support the last two videos in particular have gotten. Blows me away, and I cannot stress enough thank you for that. But with out of the way, let's dive right in. And maybe the first example of this that I really want to bring up, because it is not a character I would recommend, but I do have to give a shout out here to Luke. Finally, someone has invested the time, has done really well with it, and shocker, as I kind of hinted at earlier, it can clear 9 out of 9 crab, and we would expect this to be something that could then scale well into later content. Now, there is a small disclaimer I want to add here, just because we are very quickly learning anything that scales up with multi-hits, Luke and, well, in particular, Mei Lin, as we're going to be talking about shortly, they just do better in this type of content because as you're able to get either AP epiphanies on certain cards, which are going to extend out your turns, or if you just get the key morale buffs on certain cards that say, hey, if someone is attacking 20 times in a turn, even getting like a morale 4 is going to be a significant overall damage increase for them. So for that reason, when we have infinite scalers like Luke, Mei Lin, and then to a degree, Tressa, if we want to count the infinite combo variation with the healing daggers, these are things that kind of scale beyond everything else in the game currently. So Luke is certainly an option that you could make if you are just really loving their playstyle, but also keep in mind that there are going to be some people who just really love a all-in playstyle. You really want to get Luke in. Maybe you want to unlock his E2. Now, maybe the third thing I should have mentioned up front is about manifest egos, right? We do get those per season, so I would not recommend spending your selector on upgrading the dupe quantity of a unit. In the future, we may get some other type of selector, but at least for right now, this is the only guaranteed way to get one of these 5 stars. And at the time that I'm recording this, Haru has already rotated into the standard banner. So for the future case, if someone's going back and watching this, this will never be updated for the new characters that get added. It'll always just be the original 10. So with all that out of the way, where does that really bring us? So first and foremost, we are going to talk about Mei Lin, and I'm just going to go back to my own combatant so I can talk about certain cards in particular. So if you're new to Chaos Zero Nightmare, maybe you haven't heard just how absolutely insane that this character is, but my first recommendation that I have to give is going to be for Mei Lin for two very important reasons in particular. One is that with Flame Dragon's Jewel, you're always able to apply Passion Weakness, meaning you are able to use this character against any boss in the game and have the elemental advantage in this case. As we look forward to future content that's going to be, for example, the 2 new seasonal bosses that are going to come out, and we know that we're always going to need at least 2 teams for things like either the Hyper Basin or the big raid boss style of monster that's going to come out in a week and a half from now with the second major update. We want to put a value on characters that will just always be good. And again, because this is baked into this character's kit, you will always have that advantage in attacking. Now, I have to add maybe a small disclaimer. Of course, in the future, the devs could change the bosses where they are immune to debuffs. Maybe they want to change the boss up and have something else that prevents us from using Mei Lin. Even in that scenario, I very strongly believe that it would be a one-time deal and not more of a, permanent nerf to this character, because the devs have also directly stated that they will not nerf a character in the future. So this feels like a very safe investment. Now, for those who are maybe, again, unfamiliar with the character, we really need to talk about Rising Dragon Spire and why this character just goes so insane. And it really is this particular epiphany that says for 1 turn, for every passion card used, 1 extra hit. And if you haven't seen the dozens, if not hundreds of clips by now, it feels like it is very easy to combo this card and go up to like a 40k attack in a single turn. Now, again, I do want to try to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, is that in the future, they could design a boss that says, hey, after the 10th hit, I no longer take damage, right? And that would be another way to potentially nerf this. However, we don't have anything like that in the game currently. And when we just think about overall power and scalability, Mei Lin is truly the queen of single target damage in the game. And because of how this mechanic ultimately works, it's not entirely close. So one of the recommendations that I would give for who to use your selector on is going to be a massive boss killer like Mei Lin that will always empower you to have a second team that you can use. Again, she is going to be all single target focused, so you do have to keep that in mind, and her ego skill might be a little bit lacking at times, but the pure amount of damage that she can dish out is going to be really important. So again, if you're lacking a solid damage dealer and just want someone that's always going to be good for a boss battle, then you have to give it up for Mei Lin. Now, all that aside, I would actually stress that this is not my number 1 pick. Believe it or not, Mei Lin is not my go-to pick. And I am never beating the allegations of being a Veronica main, but I have to give it up for Veronica as my number 1 pick for the selector because, well, she is the best character to partner with Mei Lin and to get the most out of Mei Lin. Spoiler, you're going to need Veronica, so that just makes her the best already in my mind. But what's really important here is understanding just how much free damage Veronica can offer with her free ballistas every turn, but then also understanding just every damage dealer in the game is going to need ways to draw into their engine and making sure that they're doing enough damage. As just having the 0 cost draw 2 in her kit is very good by itself, and I did another video on just talking about save data at a high level and understanding that you could have 4 to 5 of these into your deck pretty easily by going through the event, getting the right copy events, and what have you, right? But this does become the best draw engine in the game that we have access to. But not only that, I do very strongly want to stress that the Ranger cards are also just good on top of that. We have Quick Shelling, which is just a free deal a little bit of damage and draw a card. And what's really important about this is that these can also have neutral epiphanies such that they can add vulnerable onto the enemies, meaning that you're able to then set up these massive damage turns for your main damage dealer. And again, Veronica does respectable damage by herself if you have her geared up, especially if you have like Sir Kowalski in a turn. So she's by no means a damage slouch herself, but what's really nice too, and this is very quickly becoming my favorite card just in the game in general for what neutral card do I want to see that helps enable a deck, right, is Precision Aim. This card, again, deals 120 for 0, which is nice. It draws you a card, but what's so important about this one in particular, and of course, it's going to be a little bit different depending on who your damage dealer is and how much value you're getting out of this, but what's really nice is that this is such a great combo enabler that it allows you to go through your turn, do all of your drawing, and then say, hey, here's a, plus AP generating card that I probably want to save for the next turn, right? I can then use precision aim to put that card on top of my deck and then draw that for the next turn. There is a lot of applications where this has actually been very important, or in some cases where it's just like, oh man, I used my anchor shot for Haru, right? And then the anchor pointer is going to bring it back. So, well, I have anchor shot in my hand, but I can't loop it again because I don't have the action points. Well, you know what? Let me put it on top of my deck so at least I have an attack going into my next turn. So especially for the characters that are all focused on maybe 1 or 2 attacks and are otherwise just held back, right, in the amount of damage they can do per turn because they don't have an easy way to retrieve that. If you find yourself in a position where you just need to set that back on top of your deck, you absolutely can. So just overall, when we think about who's going to be the best support for not only being a good draw engine, but man, I can't tell you how many times that this giant ballista has just crit for like 1700 damage. And, AoE is always nice to have depending on the fight that you're going into. You could use some of the other ballistas. I always just default to this one when I get it because it's just universally the best in my opinion, based on the content that we've seen in the game so far. So again, this is a character that you'll be very surprised that is extremely AP efficient, is a great draw engine, right, for your main combatants, and really just gives you everything that you could want in a single character's unit, because again, we also have some really nice neutral cards to rely on when we need them. And then I have some of the other ones. Leap attack is another option if you really wanted to. I don't like this one as much because, again, it does have a cost associated to it, and it does have the inspiration tag to it, so you have to really draw into it to get the most value, which can lead to some awkward turns. Of course, you could set it back on top of the deck with precision aim if you really want to, but otherwise, I'm going to skip that. But the other thing I really want to stress is just understanding how insanely strong the divine epiphanies are, or just epiphanies in general, right? Having something that can act as a buffer or debuffer for your team is extremely important. So this will be a nice segue into my third recommendation, which is not a character per se, right? There's no single character that I think would make this spot. Instead, I've hopefully made a point to thinking about what do my team needs look like overall, right? Mei Lin, great single target damage dealer, great bossing character, but does require significant support to really get the most out of her. Veronica, while not doing as much damage as maybe a dedicated damage dealer, unless you build her that way, she is an amazing support that gives you infinite draw cards, and with the right divines, can also be a very nice buffer or debuffer, depending on, what application that you're looking for. So then the third option that I want to give a shout out to is, again, not a particular character, but more of like an understanding of what does it bring to the team. As we were building this out, and I've done a video that goes into this in a bit more detail about how to deal more damage, you'll find yourself that if you're playing somebody like Haru or somebody like Yuki in particular that wants to have these massive damage hits, you'll find out that you need someone who can reliably apply vulnerable. Now, I do want to stress that if I were to use my Kalipe save file here, if you want to live the dream, if you want to rely on a character that maybe also works with the Celestial tag, and if you are okay with going through the RNG, spending, let's exaggerate a little bit, right? Let's say it spends 100 hours to try to get the right epiphany, the right copies, the right gear, and all that stuff, just so you can have someone that applies vulnerable, which is a very important debuff in this game, arguably the second most important one, or well, most important debuff. But when you think about buffing, morale is the other one I was kind of hinting at there, right? Two very important things to focus on for your teams to deal the most amount of damage. We have Vulture Ejection, who could certainly cover that area for us, right? We by enough RNG and by enough pure spite, we could get there and say, hey, I want to save my selector. Felipe is going to be good enough, or maybe you have another character. Again, I'm just using this because I had save data with it to make the example. But instead, I would consider having someone like Magna, who can just be a great AoE vulnerable applier. And once you get her going with her entire kit, the way that it basically works is that whenever she gains shield, she's gaining counterattack, and then whenever she gives counterattack, she's giving stacks of vulnerable to the entire field. And this is really great because it allows you to just, once it's set up, once you do your initial investment, you can go crazy with it and just say, hey, everybody has vulnerable. I simply cannot do enough attacks, but it'll always have that debuff on the enemies, which is really, really nice. So if you don't want to deal with the stress of finding the most perfect epiphanies and really, min-maxing it to the ends of the earth, right, in the Felipe example I've given, Magna is one option. And then unfortunately, I don't have her, so I do have to just go through the menus here. But thank you to all the YouTube comments or people that were helping me out in the Discord. And now I'm totally going to forget which one it was as I'm going through this. Nope, never mind. We got it on the first try. Growing creatures also is a way that if you want to copy it, you could get vulnerable stacks on your characters, on the enemies, I should say, very easily, and buff up your characters. Now, the downside, or maybe the trade-off here then, right, is where Magna can be really great at just making sure it's hyper consistent, giving you some big shields. Orlea is actually more of an offensive character and giving you damage buffs on top of the vulnerable stacks. But notably, where she really shines is going to be if you have somebody with retain. So in the game today, at the time of recording, we have Beryl, which would be really great to partner with her, but I would not be surprised if there is another retain-focused character coming within the next few banners that would really want to have someone like Orlea. So, if you already have Mei Lin as your god-carrying, damage-dealing, boss-slaying character, and you already have Veronica, which is just going to be the queen of support, giving you infinite draw, giving you enough buffs and debuffs, again, if you filter it out and min-max it as much as possible, you kind of have an open choice. Now, again, I want to re-echo what I said up front just to put it on record again. Pick your favorite character if that's what it ultimately comes down to. Don't pick a dupe. That is the one thing I will, put my foot down on. But if you have a favorite character that you just haven't been able to get yet, pick them. But otherwise, when we think about how do we build a better team and what does that look like in terms of what most people are going to be missing at this point in the game, spoiler, it is going to be someone that can reliably apply vulnerable. And maybe I'll just add it here as like a bonus note. Like, everybody has Rey. So I just need to stress again that Rey is one of the best buffers in the game because of Predator's Blade just being insane value for morale. And if you get a Divine on this to make it free, I mean, you're living the dream at that point, right? So don't sleep on the buffers. They are very important. So again, recap here at the end for those that made it to this point, or just closing thoughts. If you need a damage dealer, you are lacking a second team, pick up Mei Lin. She's going to be great. Veronica is my actual #1 pick because I think she's just going to give you the most value overall, especially when we think about what future characters might have, right? Just having a solid draw engine that can also do a lot of damage for free is just always going to be good in this game. And then the third pick is figure out what type of vulnerable that your account would benefit most from, either a shielding focus with Magna, or if you want to go the more retain route and beefing things up with Orlea, those are going to be the two best options for buffing up your teams, getting the most damage, and truly getting the most value out of this rescue merit. So for me personally, you can see that I've actually have gotten quite a few pulls at this point. I've gotten Mei Lin, I've gotten Veronica. So for me, I am just waiting until I get the right character that says, hey, I need a retained partner, and I am slamming this button on Orlea. Again, I'm not doing it right now because there's no reason for me to, and well, the other elephant in the room that we might as well address at the end is we have no credits, we have no resources, and it is very difficult to, level up characters where we really want them to be. So Let me know your thoughts below. Did you find this type of video helpful? Again, I wanted to structure this in a way that could hopefully help some people think beyond just, oh, this is a tier 0 character, I have to pick them. There's a little bit more to the deck building and team building conversations I really wanted to do my best to highlight. So again, let me know in the comments down below. But until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.